Welcome back to Builders, Makers, Doers. I'm Andy Bassett. He's Elliot Bassett. Today, we're here to talk about recruiting, hiring people. It's not just about bringing people into the organization, but it's really about reducing risk and building a resilient business.
Let's build off that. Welcome back, everybody, to Builders, Makers, Doers. Got the both of us again.
Yeah, it's good.
But you know what? We like to do these ones because we can kind of go deeper on some specific topics. And so, today we really want to talk about, honestly, what's been a common theme on about every episode. Is people. And it seems like every time we ask the question of what are the top challenges some of our guests have faced in their business, people, finding people, keeping people, recruiting, culture, anything that surrounds people in the business comes up in that conversation as something they've been dealing with, or at some point in their career was one of the most challenging things they dealt with. And so that's what we're going to spend some time talking about today. But in your mind, how do you look at people in a business? Obviously, there's tons of like AI out there right now saying it's going to replace all the people. But just from your conversations with clients and, how you view our business, et cetera, like why is that such a resounding conversation we have?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, if we reflect back on the guests we've had on the show, I think we're batting 100 when we ask what big key problems, risks in the organization. It's always around people and finding people. So, I mean, to answer the question, it doesn't matter if it's in our business, if we're in the trades or whatever. I mean, at the end of the day, the real driving force that is going to allow us as owners, founders, to be able to get the business, a resilient business, to the next stages, next steps, next vision, through time, is going to be on the backs of our people.
Yep.
Right? I mean, it just is what it is. Now, you mentioned tech, you mentioned AI. Obviously, that stuff in a lot of people's minds is a threat. I'm not sure that's the right lens to view that through when we talk about people. I think it's really a tool, right? It's a tool to allow our people to be able to perform at the highest level, right? In the things that matter most to us. In our business, we always talk about it, creating client-facing opportunities for our people. But in the trades, it's, there's tons of tech and more to come, AI to come, to allow certain things that take people's time away from doing the craftsmanship, the work, the skill set that they have, and being able to refocus more time on that. So, little side note on that piece of the conversation, but back to, people and recruiting. I mean, at the end of the day, I think as founders, people that listen to this, watch this, there's a point at which you definitely have to realize, we talk about this all the time, that it's no longer just you building the business, doing what it is you do, but it's people that you've surrounded yourself with that are going to get you to the next level. And so I think we've got to start to think about, how are we building plans and strategies to go out and attract, to recruit those folks? And then once we've got them, what are we doing within our organization to retain them? Those are the two pieces. How do we attract, and how do we ultimately retain?
Well, yeah, let's talk about the recruiting side for a minute, because the best businesses we talk to, I guess, have a system around recruiting people. They don't treat it as a task or a reactive task when they lose somebody, or now they need to go hire somebody because they're growing, et cetera. They really do have a system around, how do I create a network? How do I create a pool of vetted people that I know I could go to if I need somebody? It's an ongoing conversation with them when it comes to finding the right people. And then I also think a lot of what we hear is they'll leverage their current team to find introductions, make introductions to other like-minded people. Absolutely. If you're happy with your current team and you want to replicate more of your current team, probably the best place to start is to ask them who else they might know that's similar to them. Or if they came from another job, who else in their prior network might be looking for a better opportunity that fits the culture of what you're trying to build. Because that's the other thing too, is you can bring in a highly talented person, but if they don't fit the culture you're trying to build, it can actually be a net negative.
Yeah, absolutely.
To the business. And so recruiting just has to be top of mind consistently for the business owner. You're the leader. You're the one that drives the culture and everything in the business. And you should be the one most passionate about the vision and know what you're doing. And so you should be the one that's always constantly recruiting the right people, especially at key areas in the business. But so what in your conversations with clients, how have you approached that, or how do the best businesses look at that?
Yeah. Well, I think first off, there's a life cycle, right, to every business. So I think there's stages to this conversation, which is early on, a lot of it is going to be on the founder, right? To go out and find people. And then as you start to grow as an organization, you get to a point that you just mentioned, which is now you've got a team around you. You've probably had some people develop into more leadership type roles, and now they're out recruiting. They're talking to their friends, the people they work with, people they've seen, competitors or whatever, and they're kind of doing some recruiting. But then there gets to a point where it's like, all right, we're growing quick. The team can't focus as much time, energy, and effort on recruiting as we'd like. And now we start thinking about, do we outsource with hiring external recruiters to go, and navigate this for us? Or even more so, do we think about bringing that role on internally, right? And we've actually, at Ellerbrock, we've gone through all of those phases.
Every one of them.
Yeah. And so we can talk probably later on about, bringing that role internally here on our team with Michaela and what that's meant, even how we give advice to our clients and kind of the journey we've been through. But so I think we could probably tackle, I suppose, maybe the different phases, but, going to the kind of first phase is we've started a business, we've founded it. It's tough, right? We have to navigate doing the work all day, every day, and then put kind of that recruiting or that talent acquisition hat on, and how do we go do it? And I think first and foremost, it's acknowledging that we've got to figure out how we, balance all of that, as owners, founders, leaders, and then realizing like there's going to be that point at which, in order to achieve the goals that we want to achieve, it's going to have to be with others. Right. And so I think, again, there are the life cycles of business, but those are kind of when you talk about what we've seen at different degrees with our clients, it kind of fits into those different buckets, if you will, as to where people are on their journey.
Yeah, I mean, totally. And, where I would add to that is just going back to the best business owners, the best leaders are constantly recruiting. They're constantly looking for good, talented people. And they don't treat it as where I might shift a little bit of what you said. They don't treat it as like, now I have to go do that thing, which is recruiting. It's just ingrained in what they do. And then as you grow, to your point, it's figuring out the systems that allow you to do that regularly. Might be hiring a person to go do that, et cetera. But again, how do you just keep this top of mind? Because it is ultimately the most important thing in your business right now. But this isn't necessarily a new thing in the trades. Like, there's been labor shortages. It's a highly competitive industry in all the trades for people. We talked about AI a minute ago. It's funny how that's shifted, right? Like, back 10 years ago, it was like all the trades were going to be replaced by robotics or whatnot. And now everybody's like, I think I want to start a plumbing business. It's like, it's the only thing that is going to. AI is not going to take over right now. So again, a lot of doomsday stuff out there, but
you bring up a couple of good points, because I think one of the things as specifically people in the trades, if you think about what it took to get to the point you are to be able to do whatever it is you're doing every day, like it took time, it took practice, it took perfecting that skill set. Recruiting's not a whole lot different, right? And I think that's one of the things that I would tell people is you've got to kind of, train that muscle, if you will, over time to understand how to go out. Because you mentioned it, there's no denying that there's a labor shortage in the trades. Hopefully that's shifting a little bit, but that exists and has existed. So the mass numbers of people just aren't there to go out and grab from, right? Generationally, people want different things. The baby boomer generation, specifically when we talk about the trades, had a very different mindset about what it meant to go out and do the work versus, some of the generations that have since followed. And so understanding how to recruit to, how to speak to that generation, how to, bring them into whatever stage you are in your business. Like, you got to understand that stuff and spend the time, again, perfecting that side of your craft, which is how do I attract people? Because, the cost of a bad hire, you started to reference, it's significant.
Oh my gosh.
We think about just the time that goes into recruiting that person, what we could have otherwise been doing. And then that person doesn't succeed. And, onboarding somebody, training them, all of the things that goes into it, getting them equipment, tools,
impact on your team, like all the stuff.
Massive. Right. And so again, I think, a lot of companies are still just don't understand how important it is to understand. They kind of just do it in a passive way, right? Recruiting. And they're doing it probably maybe like it was more in 2005, 10 or whatever, times have changed. So I think that's one thing I would specifically for that kind of first stage that I was referencing, which is it's still, the key leaders or founders that are out doing the recruiting, understand it, study it a little bit, put a system or process in place, just like you would, pouring a foundation or doing whatever you're doing to figure out how you're going to go get people.
Yeah. And a lot of times when we're talking to folks, it almost feels like they might know that they need better, different people, but or that's their bottleneck, but haven't figured out how to address it, and haven't figured out how big of an issue it probably is and how much it's holding them back. I just think about several client conversations where like the light bulb goes on and they're like, all right, this is something we absolutely have to focus on. Like, it's the biggest thing that's holding us back right now is turnover or getting the right people. You can almost see the light bulb come on. And that's when you start to have conversations about how are you going to tackle this? And here's some of the options. But it usually is one of the biggest things at some point in a business that's going to hold you back.
Yeah. You're spot on. And I hear all this, I think about like our journey along the way, and how similar it is. But that's just it. That's the focus I think people have to have is, if I'm not understanding this, I'm not leaning into it. If I'm not building the systems and processes, how is it holding me back?
Yeah. Well, and you think like, let's even take it to the smaller scale. If you're making 4 or 5 hires a year, and let's say that those are $100,000 hires for just easy math, you have $500,000 in salary into those folks. If those are turning over, your costs could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. How much are you willing to invest, whether it's your time, depending on where you're at in the life cycle, but your time hiring an outside firm, hiring somebody internally, but it puts it into perspective when you actually take that step back and look at it at a macro level of how much is this costing the company. You look at then lack of progress, opportunity cost, it's probably even bigger.
Yeah.
How much of those dollars are you willing to take and put into some sort of a solution?
Well, and so again, thinking through our journey, and I realizing too that this is going to be, for some of the audience, this is going to be a future state, and for many, you're there already. So to your point, this was eye-opening for me, and I'll credit a lot of our team for going down, getting to the point where we decided to bring recruiting internally. And why we did that, as referenced earlier, people are going to be how we achieve success, how we get to our vision and our mission. And so how we got there, we spent 10, 15, 20% of our time, right, as leaders doing some recruiting, going out, trying to tell the story, trying to get people in this pipeline to want to come join the company. We obviously, had our team doing the same thing, but we all had, day-to-day stuff we needed to do to build the, move the company forward. And so what we figured out is that worked, right? We were able to bring good people in, but we also missed a lot of times, right? Because it wasn't 100% of the time and energy that we put into it. Also, because we couldn't put 100% of our time and energy into it, we didn't exactly have a pipeline necessarily of people that we'd been talking to, been bringing along, that when, the situation arose, we were prepared to, solve for that. And so what I would call that was we were very reactive, right? A situation would arise, somebody would leave, or we'd grow into a role or opportunity or need, and we'd just have to go react, which meant we'd have to go build that pipeline, fill it up, try to hire somebody. And so those things. And then we also found ourselves, trying to utilize to take that off of our plates. We started to look at, outside firms and things of that nature. Again, there's a very good place for those, and those were very good for us for a period of time. But as we started to really shift our vision, mission of the company, get real dialed on that and what it looks like 3, 5, and 10 years, it was hard, I think, for outside firms to really be able to portray that at the level that somebody internally could. So that, and then of course, that's where we got to the shift of it made sense to bring that role on internally. But my point is, that was our journey. My point is, and something you said, you really get objective about the time, energy, capital, dollars being invested into all the things I just talked about. You can actually start to see where moving yourself quicker along these phases, if you will, can make a lot of sense. I think that's the lens that people always have hesitation on is, man, it's going to cost so much to take this off my plate and hire an outside firm to recruit people. Yeah. Or it's going to cost so much to bring that role on internally. Or
only look at the hard cost.
Yes. And so I think that's point of me telling our story is exactly that. Because I think people need to understand that if we really think about it, we can move ourselves along this journey quicker and be really happy with the investment we're making.
Oh, I 100% agree with that. I think one of the things in there that I don't want to overlook, which is more of a hidden cost that I think we've experienced over time, and we've talked to many others that would probably agree, but it's important if you make the wrong hire, or if you have a person that's in the wrong seat, wrong person for your organization, not performing, et cetera, that you part ways with that person at the right time, when you can, because it's not doing them any justice to keep them in a role that they're not suited for. And it's not doing you or your team justice by keeping that person in the role. And if you have the wrong person in the wrong seat, it can do more to demoralize and impact culture than almost anything. But what happens is, and I think the hidden cost of not being proactive and having a pool of people is it makes you more nervous to let that person go because you don't know. Yeah, the work's got to get done, right? And so if you have the flip side of that, I guess, is if you have a pool of people that you've connected with that are potential opportunities, you might be more willing to, and maybe it's not even like fire the person. Maybe it's just have a higher standard and hold their feet to the fire, more accountable to the role quicker than you otherwise would, because you have that to fall back on. And I know that we've experienced that over time. And several other business owners, because it's a real thing. If you have that backup, you're a little bit more confident in being able to hold that person accountable to them.
Yeah. Well, and I want to drill down on that a little bit more too with, we always talk about the 10 impact areas of risk, right? Here at Ellerbrock. And we talk about, these different,
just a little bit.
What's that?
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Yeah. In our everyday conversations and vernacular, but like the 10 impact areas of risk. We always talk about singular strategies and how it touches multiple, right? And so what you were just talking about is exactly that, which is if we get more diligent in this and we're not, bringing the wrong people into the organization, having excessive turnover and all the things that you just referenced, what is that? How many areas can that touch? So think about people in the trades. I mean, it has a massive impact on safety, right? If we're bringing the wrong people in and having high turnover, they're not getting trained up probably at the speed we want. There's a higher likelihood that we're onboarding the wrong person that could potentially get hurt. They're not familiar with the equipment, our job sites, whatever it is. So safety is massively impacted. Obviously, we talk about the benefits and retention of people, right? Like right there, that's it. We're not retaining our folks. There's a massive cost, high cost of turnover. We talk about, business continuity planning. When we don't have as seasoned of a workforce and something punches us in the face, our likelihood of being able to have a business continuity strategy could be at risk. Or I think about key personnel planning and future business exit planning. Like all of these things rely on us getting better at bringing people in, keeping people, and then bringing them up within the organization. So again, back to key personnel and exit planning, we are kind of grooming that next generation of people that can lead the company. And ultimately, if it's our desire, potentially take it over internally. So like how many areas this can touch when we talk about this, the impact areas of risk, it's wild, right? People seem to nearly touch all of those. Yeah. And so I want to, again, emphasize that if we're starting to think about this, we're starting to put systems and processes in place. Not only are we solving the problem when it comes to people, it's starting to really impact all these other areas that you're investing a lot of time and energy and resources into as well. Right. And so that's the piece I think that gets lost a lot of times when you start thinking about these things in silos and you're trying to get yourself around, man, is it worth investing more time and energy into recruiting and in the systems and processes into, how we bring people into the organization? Well, think about how it touches all those other areas. Think about what it can mean 5 and 10 years from now.
That's massive. And I think we've talked a lot about, the impact this can have. Let's get a little more tactical.
Okay.
And talk about, I think some of the common themes we see when businesses are struggling with this, and then what we can do about it. And so we've talked about just being reactive and how that causes some of the problems. But I think one of the other things that is very important to do, and this has to be done at each role, because every role in the business is different, requires a different type of person, a different caliber of person, et cetera. But really identifying what that ideal employee looks like for that role. Well, I should take a step back. For the organization first, do they meet your core values? Do they share the same passion you do? Are they going to fit the culture? That's first and foremost. Yep. So I'm kind of making that assumption we've checked that box.
Right.
But then for each role is really getting granular and specific as to what does this role need? What are the skill sets that somebody needs to have in order to be successful in this role? Look at past hires and somebody that didn't work out in that role, and why did you have to let them go? I think that's a big one. That's a great way to identify the areas that you didn't identify in the hiring process, or maybe you just didn't realize that role needed that type of a skill set. But really breaking down each role into its core components of what that person needs to be able to do. And then determine, are you going to train or hire for those? Because that's a big piece too.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
If you're going to hire for those, that's a great way to do it. But typically those are harder hires and they're going to be more expensive, which is fine. Like you're paying for somebody to have that experience and knowledge day one when they walk in the door. It can be a great way to do it. But the other side, especially if you're growing and you don't have the resources to do it, is you have to bring somebody in that you think has the raw talent and skill set and train them up, there's a cost there as well. You might be able to pay them a little bit less as they build those skill sets. They can work into that type of compensation over time, but you're going to have to invest the resources to train them. And all those things have to be taken into account when you think about who's the ideal person for this role. And that's based on where you're at as a company. That's based on, we talking about our journey. We've realized that over time is we're growing quickly. We don't have a lot of internal resources to take somebody that, particularly on the sales side, take somebody that's never done it before, but we think has some raw talent and teach them everything that we need to. So we need a little bit more experience. We need somebody that's done certain things in the past and can show us that they have those skills. And down the road, we'd love to be able to bring somebody in, or multiple people over time, and train them exactly. There's benefits to that. Train them exactly how we want them to go do the job. But it's a different model.
Yeah, well, you're spot on, and both can be the right answer, right? Mm-hmm. But why you mentioned the ideal employee or ideal person we want to bring on our team. That's an interesting thing, because I think, as I know, it was our journey, and I'm guessing for most people that watch and listen to this, we know what our ideal client is, right? We spend all this time figuring out the ideal job we want to do, or the profile of what the perfect type of work would be. And we try to go out and seek that as much as we can, right? We don't always get it. We know we have some jobs that don't go the way we want them to, but over time we start to learn we're really good at this. And if we could duplicate that client or that customer over and over, we'd be successful. Yeah. It's the same lens when it comes to our people. And so in our business, we talked a lot about building out this target market client, right? We knew who we could serve really well with our mindset and solution. And it's like applying the same principles to who are the ideal people that fit culturally, skill set, all the things. And so I think and then the other piece too, that was always interesting to me is, everybody that's watching this is going to have varying degrees of how they're out marketing their company or whatever. But we spend so much time marketing to try to acquire business, right? Clients, customers, whatever it is. It's the same messaging in a lot of regards. Once you've dialed in how you're going out and trying to attract new business, it's the same thing to attract new people, right? They're gonna gravitate towards the same message. And so that in our journey was something that I don't know why it took me a while to, I guess, figure out. But it's such a key piece to it, though, that I think, because again, I'm knowing people in the trades, knowing how passionate they get about their work and the jobs they love doing. It's like, take that same lens and get that passion towards finding the right people.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because, I would call that like employer positioning or branding in the market. But there's an argument to be made, again, depending on where you're at in your business and how your business operates. But the branding to other potential employees, team members, is more important than the branding to clients, because those might be the people that are going to come and bring in the clients. And if you have a way, or you're positioning yourself in the market to be the place that those top level performers want to go and want to work for, that might be the way you go and get more clients.
Yep.
And so but again, that's often overlooked. To your point, is most of the branding in the marketplace is all centered around how do we go get more clients? Which, nothing wrong with that. But your positioning in the market as it relates to potential hires is huge.
Yeah, it goes way beyond just compensation, right? There's so many things that go into it, and how you can position all of that is so important to attract the right people, right? And I know that, like, when we talk specifically to the trades, obviously compensation is such a big part of it, but there's so much more, right? And I think too, going back to what we talked about a while ago, generationally, that has shifted. Current generation of people coming into the workforce, there's a lot more that moves the needle than just purely the compensation. So I think understanding that and being able to, market towards that in your organization is gonna, put you in a position to, be more successful.
Yeah, that makes me think of an actual client of ours that went through this transition. Son bought it from his dad and just quickly realized that he wanted to position the company much differently from a people perspective. And, it used to be run with that old school mentality of, come in and get your stuff done and, get out of here, and the fiery attitudes on job sites and all the things you probably think of when you think of a construction company. But the problem with that was, he was very hands-on, very kind of in the weeds on everything. The business was struggling to grow, got over its skis at one point, too much work, couldn't do it all, couldn't keep people, all the things, right? Son comes in and kind of realizes that's a broken model. I need to create an environment that I can go recruit the best people. I can keep them here. I can grow steadily, and really was intentional about doing that. And one of the things he did was honestly give people ownership of tasks and actually give them more work to do, which is what they wanted. They hated, I know how to go do this thing, but I got to go to Andy so he can tell me how I know how to do this thing. They just want to go do it, and they want to get the work done. And so anyways, it's been a real big success story around, kind of turning around the culture of that company to make sure that it's going to be able to live beyond his tenure there.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of cool, because it does make a big difference. And we see it all the time in the examples that this stuff has in businesses.
Yeah, totally. And I know obviously the story you're talking about, and it is. I mean, I think as going back to the life cycle of businesses, right? And there's a great example. We're transitioning, generationally or whatever, and just how that shifts. But so I think the other piece we see, and we've mentioned systems and processes a lot. So now you kind of figure this out, right? And you're like, okay, I've got it. I know I need to get people in. I know I need to, do all these things we've just been talking about. And I think it's really important to think through, okay, what are the systems and processes? And what again, going back to some things we've experienced, things we've seen with our clients is, if you get good at recruiting you want to spend the time and energy as much as you can on the front end, pre-hire, right?
Yeah.
It's something we weren't doing well. We were reacting.
Yep.
We didn't have really good systems and processes from a, onboarding or pre-hire perspective. And that's where I saw us missing so much, is we just didn't dedicate the time pre-hire, and they just weren't the right fit. Right. And so I think thinking through that is if we get to the point where it's like, all right, we're focusing on this, just think about how you can put all those systems in place in advance of making the decisions, so that you don't have to turn over because you made the wrong decisions. Because nobody wants to do that, right?
Yeah,
no, you don't want that. It impacts the company. Obviously, that individual and their family made a big choice to make a change or whatever, and if it wasn't the right thing. So a piece of advice to folks would be, do as much as you can, pre-hire. Because then once you hire, we're in the trades. We know what happens. Now we got to train them. We got to, get them into our safety strategies. We've got to get them, they may have the skill set, but they haven't done it the way we do it. So we've got to kind of get them. There's all the things that go on post hire that I think if we can really tackle the pre-hire positioning and strategies, we're going to be in a lot better spot.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a great point. The only thing I'd add to that, just kind of as we wrap up, is be honest with the candidate about what it's like to work at your company.
Yeah.
Don't sugarcoat it. Don't sell them on it. If you're trying to sell somebody on the business and doing that, trying to paint a rosy picture on what it's like to work there, they're going to come in and not experience what you told them. They're not going to be a happy camper, and they're going to leave.
Yeah.
So I think that's equally as important of a conversation. Is you want to be recruiting them, obviously, and trying to help them understand why they should work with you, but make sure that you're just honest about your expectations and why you might be different and what they're getting themselves into. Because to your point, just on the flip side of that is they are making a big decision. If somebody's going to uproot their lifestyle and come and take the chance on your company to help them see their future vision, like that's a big deal.
Yep.
And you want them to make the right decision. Kind of go into it eyes wide open.
Yep.
But you never want to be in that position where you brought somebody in and right away within a month, you're like, oh man, we missed here.
Yep.
Because that's not fun for anybody involved.
No, not fun, expensive,
Yeah,
all the things. Talk
stuff.
about resilience. It starts to, cut that out at the knees. And I want to, before we do wrap up, I want to tell a story of a current client that we kind of watched through this whole journey, because I think they're in the trades, incredible business, really, really good people in place. But there's been a journey, right? It's a family business that had a generational transition over the last handful of years. Those are always challenging. We all know we've been through it in our organization. There's a lot of positives, but you got to get through it. They navigated that very well, got through that. New generation, highly growth focused, real entrepreneurial founder at mindset. And so get through the transition and growth mode starts, right? And so they start expanding, geographically where they're doing work, came up with some pretty cool ways to get more efficient at the work they're doing. And so able to start growing the amount and opportunity of work they're doing. And so they get big time into growth mode. And exactly, so I'm talking to the owner throughout a lot of this, and the conversation starts to shift to, I'm having a hard time balancing my time, my leadership's time around going out and finding people, because we've got all these opportunities. We've built really good relationships with contractors. We've got these jobs that are kind of lining up, and we're having a hard time fulfilling them because I can't get the people. And so we're talking through this. And so, we talked about how do we shift time from doing the work to the recruiting. And so we watched that happen, right? And successfully, but then growth keeps happening. And so now we've been able to bring some of the right people in, but we kind of keep hitting these barriers, which is now we're getting work, and the work compounds on itself, and we're doing good work, and we've got good people. And then the shift was, okay, I'm still struggling with this recruiting thing. And so let's try some outside, recruiting firms. Again, worked well, got us more volume, got more people coming in. And then we hit another barrier, which is it's just not getting the results we hoped it would. It did early on, and we're bad. So now the conversation shifts. Does it make sense to think about bringing that on internally? Yeah. The beauty of it is we're able to bring Michaela into the conversation, talk through it, pluses, minuses, how you go about it, all of the things. And
some guidance.
What's really cool is they made the decision to bring that internally onto their team to start recruiting. And it just, again, this is a real life scenario. Somebody in the trades that we've watched over the course of, the last 5 to 7 years go right through the journey we're talking about, each of the life cycles of the business.
Yeah.
And it comes with a lot of positive, a lot of challenges, but we've been able to help others on their team internally and externally, been able to help give advice. And that journey's been awesome. And they're going to kick butt.
Yeah.
I mean, they're an incredible company. Cool. And so anyway, I wanted to share because we've talked about it and we've seen it play out in real life. Yep. And like they are positioned as a company now to go out and achieve all their goals and success because they've navigated that journey.
Yeah, I think that's a great story. And I think that's a good spot to wrap up this episode. So hope everybody took a lot away from that. And again, this is one of the biggest things I think any business can be focused on. So make sure you're thinking about the right things and all these things we've discussed and where you're at in the life cycle. And, we'd love to be part of that conversation. So,
yeah, we talk about resiliency. People are at the foundation of it, man.
That's right. With that, we'll see everybody next week.